Is the Jeep Grand Cherokee reliable? Well, we'll talk about it. I'll include a link to the Jeep Insanity's website in the description down below. They're providing us with this Grand Cherokee. Let's get into it. There are currently two different powertrain options available in the Grand Cherokee. The 3.6 liter V6 and then the 4xe, which is a plug-in hybrid with a 2 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder. This one's got the 4xe. Now, which powertrain is better? Well, here's a quick rundown. If the badge is blue, it's not the Jeep for you. Both powertrains can have their problems, but the 4xe is significantly less reliable compared to the Pentastar V6. The base engine in this, the 2.0 turbo, is actually a pretty solid engine. There are Wranglers with over 100,000 miles with this engine. But this engine can have issues with the transmission, just shuddering, harsh shifting, and completely failing. On top of that, you can have tons of electrical failures with this powertrain. Again, it's ultimately two different powertrains that have to talk to each other, the electric and then the gasoline engine. And there's tons of miscommunication, and so you have lots of rough performance in general, and that's kind of like the best case scenario. And then the worst case scenario is the powertrain just poops out and then you have a brick. So suffice to say, unless you get a massive extended warranty and a massive discount, I don't really think the 4xe is worth going for at this point. The V6 is a much better powertrain. That being said, understand that the V6 can have problems like head gaskets blowing, for example, and you can just have general engine failure. So make sure that you keep up on maintenance and understand that even if you keep up on maintenance, there can be some potential issues with the 3.6 V6. It is by no means perfect, and this shows that Jeep has a lot of work to improve the engine reliability of the Grand Cherokee in general, and maybe that means they should bring back the Hemi. Again, not a perfect engine, but better than 3.6 and the 4xe. I'm trying to hit 500,000 subscribers before the end of the year. I'd really appreciate it if you guys would help out with that. Now, the Grand Cherokee has tons of different packages available. This one is the Trailhawk, which is the off-road package, and it's also kind of in the middle when it comes to pricing. Well, kind of. It's a little bit on the higher end. But there are tons of packages, like the Limited, for example, which is kind of truly in the middle. And then there's the regular Grand Cherokee, and then there's the L. I don't know if they actually have any L's that I can see of, but the L is the 3-row version. The regular Grand Cherokee, the non-L, is just the regular 2-row version. And that Trailhawk we have, by the way, is just the regular Grand Cherokee, so it's the 2-row version. And you know, when it comes to size and practicality and all that, the new Grand Cherokee is actually fantastic. I mean, you've got this stylish cabin, lots of space, and you have a huge cargo area with the Grand Cherokee as well. And that's kind of one of the sad things about the Grand Cherokee. It's such a good car if Jeep could get it to work a little bit better than it currently is. So what are some other problems? Well, suspension issues. You can get the Grand Cherokee with regular springs. You can also get it with air suspension. This Trailhawk has the air suspension. And what you can see is just premature wear on suspension components. And I think part of that is it's a Jeep, right? So people are going to use this a little bit rougher compared to other vehicles. And you know, I hate to say it, the Grand Cherokee is a nice vehicle, but I don't think that Jeep built it in the same way that they built the Wrangler. Obviously, it's unibody, independent suspension rather than body on frame, solid axle like the Wrangler. So yeah, the Wrangler can definitely take a lot of abuse, both on-road and off-road. The Grand Cherokee, not so much, and so I think you're seeing more premature wear with a lot of the components because people are using it like a Jeep. And you know, Jeep did build this a little bit better than something like a Toyota RAV4 in terms of the off-road durability, but it's still a car at the end of the day. And then those airbags, right? That is fancy, complicated technology, and really only Land Rover's been able to figure out how to make airbags reliable at this point. And so that's just something that is really cool because it gives you adjustable ride height and a more comfortable ride, but at the same time, it's also something that tends to break, and when it does break, it's very expensive. Now, aside from that, there are general build quality complaints about the Grand Cherokee. And this honestly doesn't surprise me because I've reviewed a few used Grand Cherokees. But yeah, doors kind of being maybe a little bit misaligned, closing them kind of makes a funky sound. Like this one sounds completely fine, but also having kind of like premature wear in terms of the opening and closing where the hinge just starts to creak and all that kind of stuff. And so again, to an extent, it can feel like certain things are built a little bit cheaper than they ought to be. But all of this pales in comparison to, well, the potential electronic issues. These new Grand Cherokees have this big digital gauge cluster in the center. You can just have complete failures with the system where it just doesn't boot up properly. Also, just general battery draining issues where the electronics are parasitic, where they basically make the battery go flat because they're constantly pulling power even when they're not being used. And it kind of makes sense. We have one screen, two screen, and we have another screen here for the passenger. So there's just lots of electronics, lots of screens inside. And then something that you don't really need to own the car to see is sometimes the infotainment system can be pretty unresponsive. Like, it actually picks up my finger, but you can see it takes quite a bit of time for some of these tabs to actually load up. It's not nearly as quick as a lot of the other modern infotainment systems. But one thing that I will give Jeep credit for is they still give you physical buttons for a lot of functions. So even if the screen up here fails, it's not like everything is built into the screen. There's a lot that's built into it, but they also have a lot of physical redundancies. And part of me wonders if they added those physical redundancies because they assumed that there could be potential issues with all these new electronics that they've been adding into the Grand Cherokee and just the Jeep lineup in general. So all you really need to know, more electronics in your Grand Cherokee, more electrical issues are bound to, well, I shouldn't say bound to happen, but there's a higher chance that they'll happen. All this electronic stuff is, I don't know, kind of disappointing to me because I'm a huge, I mean, like, people think that I hate brands when I make these reliability videos. I'm making these reliability videos on every single brand. Every single brand has problems, but I don't know, I just find it disappointing because I really do have a soft spot for Jeep. My grandparents had a Grand Cherokee and a Cherokee there in the 90s, and I mean, those vehicles were such tanks. One of them had like 300,000 miles on it, and it ran perfectly fine. It's like, yeah, back then it's like you maintain the Jeep properly and like things are gonna break here and there, but like you can keep them on the road. Just great vehicles in general. And these modern Grand Cherokees, all that kind of stuff, they just got a little bit too complicated. Again, Jeep, it's like they tried to become like a mainstream Land Rover, because Land Rover doesn't really sell that many cars in the US. And, well, it's bit them in the butt, that's for sure. And especially this 4xe powertrain, I mean, the performance on this powertrain is like I've had several test vehicles. It's extraordinarily disappointing. It's just, right now it's being super jerky. Now this does have low fuel, but still, like, even if a car's low on gas, it shouldn't have herky-jerky performance. Yeah, just not my favorite. So, you know, it's like they had a good setup of powertrains. It's like, yeah, the 4xe was there, but you could also get the 5.7 Hemi, so it's like you had at least another premium powertrain in the Grand Cherokee that was good if you didn't want to try the new stuff. Whereas now it's like you only have the V6, the Pentastar. That's the only powertrain that's worth going for, and it's a good powertrain for the most part. Like I said, it can have some issues, that's for sure. But it feels underpowered in the segment. And so the Grand Cherokee's in a weird place right now. It's, in my opinion, got too much tech and not enough powertrain. They need to pull back on the tech a little bit and increase what we have with the powertrain. Throw the Hurricane in this, give us the Hemi again. There's so many options that Jeep has with the Grand Cherokee. And you know, I think long term, like, they'll probably, you know, hopefully figure it out, and it'll be a great vehicle, but just right now, it's a struggle. And I think that Jeep's trying to find like their new identity. They're trying to, you know, decide if they're still off-road, if they're still luxury. Again, Land Rover does kind of like off-road luxury, and Jeep's like, oh, maybe we'll do the same thing. And, you know, I don't think Jeep knows what that looks like. What I think that Jeep's tried and has, in my opinion, failed so far is off-road luxury means lots of tech. What I think off-road luxury actually means, and I think that Jeep can do this better than anyone else, because the Wrangler, I have one, it's such a good vehicle, is focus on suspension comfort, sound deadening, engine smoothness. If they made a vehicle that like, if they had the Grand Cherokee where it had super comfortable suspension, which the suspension in this is actually pretty darn good, just made sure it's reliable, right? Tons of sound insulation, and had a good engine under the hood and less tech, so that the stuff that it does have works all the time. 10 out of 10, home run. It would do fantastic. People would absolutely love it. So hopefully they change course in the right direction, but time will tell on that. But as it sits right now, the Grand Cherokee is not the worst car on the planet. There are cars that are far worse than this when it comes to reliability, but it definitely has some problems. And my friendly advice to you guys that are looking at Grand Cherokees, limited or in altitude, limited or Laredo, basically. Altitude package is the one that looks cool. with a Pentastar V6, no passenger screen. If you get one of those, you'll have all the features that you want, none of them that you don't, and your reliability, because you'll have far less electronics, will be so much better. Like if you get a Laredo with the Altitude package, that's probably the best Grand Cherokee you can get right now.